Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Astro Show, the place to be if you're curious about the cosmos. I'm your host, Dr. Sam, the founder and executive director of Wyoming Stargazing. Here, you can pick the brains of astrophysicists, get advice from an aerospace doctor, learn about what astronomers have to say about life, and find out what's going on up above your head, all in the same place. So thank you for joining us this evening and every second and fourth Tuesday of the month on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. Remember, you can chat your questions to us on Twitch and YouTube, and we will see them here on the stream, and we would love to answer them for you. On this week's show, our special guest is Dr. Rene A. Ortega Minikata from the Institute of Radio Astronomy and Astrophysics at the National Autonomous University of Mexico. Among other things, Dr. Minikata studies the chemical abundances in the interstellar medium of galaxies. He's currently focused on science communication and public outreach, and we will hear all about that later on this evening. But before that happens, let's welcome our co-star, aerospace doctor and founder of Orbital Biodesign. It's Dr. Danny Carroll.
Hey, everybody, it's good to be here.
Thanks for being here this evening.
Thank you.
And our special guest, Dr. Rene A. Ortega Minikata. Hey, Rene.
Hello.
Hello. All right. Well, we've got a fun show this evening for you, and we're going to get things started off as we always do with astro advice. And so I'll read the quotation that we have up here, and then I'll name the four possible individuals who actually said this quotation. Our special guest and our co-star will have the opportunity to guess which one actually said it, and then we'll discuss the quotation. So here it is. We became astronomers thinking we were studying the universe, and now we learn that we are just studying the 5 or 10% that is luminous. So 4 possibilities for the actual quotator of this. The first is Henrietta Swan-Leavitt, the renowned computer, as they were called back then, when women were not allowed to be professional astronomers, and instead were tasked with actually doing all the computations for the male professional astronomers, nonetheless making all of the groundbreaking discoveries themselves, but getting none of the credit. Henrietta Swan-Leavitt is known for discovering the period luminosity relationship with Cepheid variables, which was really the key that unlocked understanding the distance scales of the universe. B, Maria Mitchell, who is regarded as the first professional woman astronomer and the first woman astronomy professor when she got her teaching post at Vassar in 1885. Interesting side note with Maria Mitchell, she not only has an observatory and a museum named after her, she also came out to Wyoming to view an eclipse in the 1890s, which was the first great solar eclipse that we had in Wyoming. The second one, of course, just in 2017. And she led an entirely woman expedition of researchers out to that eclipse, making it what is believed to be the first all-women unescorted science expedition ever. So nice work, Maria Mitchell, for being a trailblazer. C, Vera Rubin, the renowned astronomer who made the early observations of the rotational speed of galaxies, noting that there were discrepancies in how fast they were rotating and how fast Newton's laws suggested they should be rotating based on their mass, and thus laid the groundwork for the discovery of dark matter. And finally, D, Jocelyn Bell Burnell, who, as a graduate student, helped build the instrument and collected the data that led to the discovery of the very first radio pulsar star. We now know that she was basically discovering these incredibly magnetically powerful stars that we call pulsars that create these jets of radio waves that pulsate hundreds of times a second. She unfortunately did not receive credit for her discovery. Her advisor, who tried to convince her that the results that she was seeing in the data were anomalous and actually not real, actually got the Nobel Prize, but she got her just deserved accolades later in life when she was awarded the Breakthrough Prize in Physics, I believe just about 10 years ago. So another trailblazer in the field of astronomy. So there are the four options: Henrietta Swan-Leavitt, Maria Mitchell, Vera Rubin, and Jocelyn Bell Burnell. And so Danny or Rene, whenever you're ready to vote on who you think actually said that, you can you just let me know.
Well,
I feel like several of these people could have said that quote.
Yeah, there's a hint embedded in this that I think Rene might know because he's a radio astronomer. But don't spoil it, Rene. Don't give the hint away. What do you think, Danny?
I was gonna maybe go with B.
Okay, B, Maria Mitchell.
Mm-hmm. I was between B and C.
Yeah, what were you thinking? In terms of like your rationale behind it, I'm just curious.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I think I don't know. Just hearing their backgrounds, and then as I was listening to, usually when I do these, I like listen to the background after having read the quote, and it's like, okay, who actually maybe would have said this? But I feel like there are several potential answers here.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Cool. Fair enough. And Rene, who are you voting for?
I'm going with Vera Rubin because of the reference there to dark matter. So I'm going with Vera Rubin there.
Cool. And indeed, it was Vera Rubin.
Went against my better judgment. Okay.
I said there was a little hint embedded in there. So that 5% that she's talking about there, Danny, this is great for our viewers actually. So the 5 or 10% that she's talking about there is all of the matter that we can actually see in the universe. Only 5 to 10% of it, somewhere in that range, is the stuff that we're actually made of that actually interacts with light that we can see with telescopes that use visible light. Another 25 to 30% of what exists is what we call dark matter, the stuff that she discovered, which doesn't interact with light. We know it's there because of its gravitational interactions with normal matter that we can see. We don't actually even know what it is. And then the remaining 70-some%, depending on how you break the numbers down, is dark energy. This stuff that seems to fill space everywhere. It's probably a property of space itself. And it's the majority of what exists in the universe. It is this energetic stuff that has no mass, but what represents the majority of what composes the universe. And we have no idea what it is. So yeah, a really interesting and humbling quotation here from Vera Rubin. It reminds me of the pie chart of the universe, right? So if you can think about a pie chart with the 3 numbers that I just mentioned, like the 5% of normal matter, like the 25% of dark matter, and then the 70% of dark energy. My professor in college used to say that was the most humble and arrogant chart in all of astronomy. Humble because only 5% is what we are, but arrogant to think we actually know what the whole pie is. Yeah, so I always chuckle when I think about that chart. You can see it on lots of websites or many different renditions of it, but yeah, that's what she's talking about there. But yeah, I'm curious about what the two of you kind of think about this comment, like coming from a professional astronomer who like was in fact the discoverer of this stuff, of dark matter.
You know, as somebody who has, as you mentioned earlier, a medical background and like med tech background, anytime I see quotes like this, or really anytime I'm a part of this show, it's very humbling, because, you know, I know a lot about some fields, but I don't know a lot about astronomy. And so I feel like every time I come on this show, I learn new things, and I'm very much a student. So, you know, to hear that that somebody like Vera Rubin, who is, you know, was a trailblazer, like some of the other people that we've seen listed in Astro Advice before, you know, to see her basically, you know, saying that that she sees herself as a student too is pretty cool. So.
Oh yeah, nicely put. And I was thinking about this quotation, Danny, actually in specifically in with respect to the medical field, and I was curious of like whether there is something like this that's happened like in the last like 100 or 50 or fewer years where you know there was such a radical advance in the understanding of either some type of medical technology or understanding of like how the human body works or some new surgical technique that really kind of like revolutionized how people thought about some aspect of medicine.
Totally. So it's interesting. That's actually a really great question. So the right when I started medical school, in one of our first lectures, one of the lecturers stood up in front of the class and looked at us and said, about 50% of what you learn in medical school is going to turn out to be wrong. We just don't know what 50%. And so, you know, it's like simultaneously very motivating and also a little bit demotivating, because you're like, wait a second, so all this stuff I'm committing to memory is like half of it's incorrect, you know. But what it really reiterated is that, you know, it's medicine is still a frontier too, you know, not just as it pertains to the spaceflight setting, but really just in general, you know, including a lot of terrestrial medicine. So, so it's pretty interesting. So like, you know, hearing the 5 to 10% that's luminous, or the 50% that we know is correct now, you know, there definitely is, you know, it's analogous, I think, to what she's saying, you know. And there's a lot of, there's one other example that I can think of. When I was, I guess, early in residency, so I went to medical school at UVA, and my first or second year of residency, I remember reading something about how at UVA, my alma mater, they had found that they had like mapped, some researchers had mapped the lymphatic system in the brain. And previously, there was not thought to have been a lymphatic system, really, like a robust network of lymphatic ducts in the brain. And so it's kind of wild to think that there were all these revisions that were made to long-standing anatomy textbooks based on something that was discovered basically in like 2016, 2017, you know.
Wow.
And so, yeah, that's, I mean, ongoing work. I mean, everybody's really still a student. So
do you think that 50% that a professor mentioned to you is that the right number? That's like 50% is actually accurate right now, and there's still 50% that, you know, is yet to be revised, compared to like the 5% that we know of in astronomy? Are we doing 10 times better in the medical profession than astronomy, or?
Yeah, I don't know. And I think, you know, one thing that's been really interesting, and I'm sure that this is analogous in the astronomy arena too, as technology evolves, there are more and more things that we are learning we don't know, you know, or there are more and more, right? There are more and more discoveries. And so, for example, right now I'm on the vascular surgery service, and we do a lot of our work from an endovascular perspective, which is an approach that wasn't even feasible a couple decades ago, you know, where we are able to place stents and fix, you know, abdominal aortic aneurysms through just accessing the, you know, one of the arteries in the groin, for example, which is kind of amazing. And like doing everything under fluoroscopy, which is basically taking a giant CT scanner, CAT scanner, and having it in real time where everybody is wearing lead and, administering contrast, IV contrast, to be able to see the blood vessels and things in real time,
Wow.
and so that's that field didn't really exist a couple decades ago. So it's been interesting to see. Yeah, I mean, who knows what the next couple fields are that don't exist right now that, will be standard practice, in 10, 15, 20 years.
Right. Yeah. So what you were just describing there, that basically kind of like brand new field or set of techniques that became available with technology, feels analogous in astronomy to the discovery of gravitational waves. The first detections were just less than 20 years ago. And it really has opened up a brand new way of seeing the universe, right? It's like Galileo pointing the telescope to the sky for the first time 400 years ago and seeing the universe in an entirely new way. And we're learning all kinds of new things about how the most massive and gravitationally intense interactions of the universe actually unfold, using that new way of looking at the universe. Rene, what are your thoughts on all this?
No, I agree. It's just, it's amazing how things like pile up the new things that we are learning. Just a few months ago, I think even a few weeks ago, with the discovery of the observation of gravitational wave background, which is a huge thing, especially because we now can know that these things are occurring all the time everywhere, and we just need to try to pinpoint where. But so all of these things are just continually adding up on the things that we don't know, and even if it's not the talking about the pie chart, even if it's not the 70% or the 25% of dark matter or whatever, there are still many things that we don't know, and every question that gets some reasonable answer opens up many other questions.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of the beauty of science in general, regardless of what discipline you're in. There is always good job security in doing research, because the more questions you ask and the more questions you answer, the more questions there are.
Sure thing. There will never be an absence of new questions. There will always be more questions than answers, and that's something that we would really to look forward to, because there will always be something that we want to know, or that there is to know, and it's amazing to hear someone with a very different background, hearing Danielle, and to see that it's more or less the same thing. All the things that we don't know, and all the things that are getting discovered, and we're learning recently, right? So it feels like every field of science has made like giant leaps in the last, I don't know, 60 years or something, and that we're just it feels but we're just getting started, right?
Yeah, I think we are, what are we, like 160, 70 years from the Industrial Revolution, right? We're 50 years in from the first computers. We really are at our infancy in technology. Like, imagine like another 150 years is going to do, what we're going to be able to understand then. We can't even imagine now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, any final thoughts about this piece of information from Vera Rubin? I guess, for me, the take-home message is a simple question that we should be asking ourselves all the time, which is, are you sure? Right? I mean, as Danny said, her medical professor was happy to proclaim that half of what they were about to learn was going to be redone by the time they finish. Right? I think that we can safely rely on that being the fact about science in general. It will remake itself probably more quickly than we can learn it. And so, yeah, constantly asking ourselves, like, are we sure we know what we're looking at? I think is what Vera Rubin is talking about here with this proclamation. We might think we're looking at the whole pie, but we're probably just looking at one tiny, tiny little slice. And only time will bear that out. All right. Well, let's move along. I'm going to do something a little bit different than what we've been doing before. We usually save what's up, Dr. Sam, for the end, and I always forget. So we're going to do it now because Saturn is up, and it is so cool. We just started seeing Saturn for the first time this year as of a couple weeks ago. It's rising now just before midnight. And so near the tail end of our stargazing programs in Wyoming, we're catching a little glimpse of Saturn down near the horizon. And, I've been stargazing for a long time, both, as a hobby and professionally. Still, I don't think there's anything cooler than seeing Saturn through a telescope. It is by far the most mind-boggling thing to see. And, the thing that most people say that we have out on stargazing programs is it looks like a sticker. when you see Saturn's rings, even through a small telescope, it doesn't look real. It looks like the pictures that you see, in online or in a magazine. And it's one of the few objects in the night sky that when you look at through a telescope, it just blows you away immediately. You don't even have to know anything about it. Just seeing the rings are eye-popping in and of themselves. So yeah, rising in the eastern sky this time of year in the northern hemisphere at around midnight. Definitely worth waiting up for. Later in the fall, it'll start rising earlier and earlier. I think by October, it rises by like 8 or 9 o'clock. And so it's a lot easier to see in the fall this year. But yeah, definitely worth waiting up in the summertime when it's still a little bit warmer out. I wanted to share 2 images of Saturn. First, this one. So this is the one most recently taken by the JWST. And it's just a remarkable image of Saturn in infrared. And so this is basically the newest image of Saturn that we have, and one that we really haven't seen before. And this was just taken a month ago today, on June 25th. So recently released new image of Saturn from the JWST, and actually just over 400 years ago. On this day, Galileo first turned his telescope towards Saturn and noticed that it wasn't a single sphere. But as he said, it appeared to be made up of a composite of 3 lobes. And he once described it as like a planet with ears. So with his small telescope, he couldn't actually see that there were rings around Saturn, but he could tell that it wasn't a perfect sphere. And as he developed better and better lenses for his telescope, he began to see more and more detail in the rings of Saturn. So here are a few of the images that he drew. Galileo over there on the right, but the top one is the very first image he drew of Saturn, and then the 2 below are later images. So he started to figure out that it really was this like ring of material around the planet. And it wasn't until Christian Huygens, a contemporary of Galileo, someone who built much better telescopes later on in the upcoming decades, where we really understood that there were separated rings of material around the planet. So yeah, 400 years ago today, it was the first time that Galileo actually made a journal entry about the potential of there being rings around Saturn. So I thought that was kind of a cool coincidence to comment on today with Saturn coming up in the sky this time of year. So now it is time for the astronomy news quiz, everybody's favorite part of the Astro Show. So we're doing this lightning round here. And so, so Danny and Rene, as soon as you think you know the answers to these upcoming questions, you can just shout them out, and we'll keep score of who gets the most amount of points. And right now, Rene has 1 point for getting the astro advice correct. So he's up by 1. And are the two of you ready?
All right.
Very will ever be.
Okay, here we go. So, around which well-known star visible in the northern hemisphere did the JWST recently identify previously unknown dust rings?
Oh no. Is it Fomalhaut?
It is Fomalhaut.
Yes.
Yeah, so another very recent observation by the James Webb Space Telescope. So this outer ring had been known before, but the inner rings shown here in this image are brand new. And so basically we think that these may be protoplanetary disks. There may be planets actually forming around Fomalhaut, and many more than previously thought to exist. So another really lovely discovery from the JWST. All right, next question. A brown dwarf star that is only 797 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're talking about, like, you know, just like hotter than like the hottest ovens you might bake bread in at like 500 degrees, right? This is a cold, cold star. Recently became the coldest such object known to emit what?
Electrons? I don't
You're
know.
close. Not electrons, but
Protons? Neutrons?
a form of radiation, actually.
Ionizing radiation.
It's actually a type of non-ionizing radiation, which is right up Rene's line. I thought Rene was going to have this.
like radio waves.
It's radio waves.
Yeah.
So this is the first brown dwarf star ever to have been found to emit radio waves. We didn't think that these really cold objects could actually emit radio wave pulses, but this one does. So the coldest known object that we've ever found to emit radio waves. All of the more typical stars that we know of in the universe, including our sun, emit across the full electromagnetic spectrum, including radio waves. But brown dwarf stars are so cold that they haven't been seen to emit in radio waves like this one is. So there we go. Brown dwarf radio emitting star, less than 1,000 degrees hot. All right, so now to cool things off a little bit, another JWST discovery. What did, just announced yesterday, in fact, what did the JWST detect within the rocky planet forming zone around this star dubbed PDS 70?
I didn't read this news.
Well, I'll give you a hint. It's got to be way colder than 1,000 degrees for this stuff to be found.
So we're naming the zone?
No, this is what was detected in the zone. What I'll give you a hint. Is it what chemical compound was detected in this rocky planet forming zone?
Water, maybe.
It was water.
Yeah.
Yeah, water vapor. Yeah, so this is the first time that we actually have a detection of water vapor in a planetary system where planets are already known to exist. We've actually seen water vapor in protoplanetary disks before, but none in a protoplanetary disk where we know that there are actually planets, where planets have already been detected. So this is really cool. This is within the habitable zone, where planets like Earth can exist. And in fact, this water vapor was found within 100 million miles of this star. And as a reference point, Earth is 93 million miles away from the sun, right? So this is right at the distance where water vapor exists on Earth with respect to this star. And it's a main sequence star similar to the sun. So who knows? Maybe this is where we're going to have the first detection of organic life with a bit more refinement and observation. So this is actually really, really exciting. This detection of water vapor in this planetary system. And it's pretty close to the Earth with respect to cosmological distances. It's only about 360 light years away. So to put that in perspective, the Milky Way galaxy is 100,000 light years across. So this star is like in our backyard. This is a really nearby star at less than 500 light years away. So who knows? Maybe in the next decade or less, we're going to be reading about the detection of life in this star that we call PDS 70. All right, moving along. A new research has found the first evidence of a massive galaxy several times the size of the Milky Way with no what in it?
Sun?
It's got some stars. Definitely got some stars.
It must be with no dark matter, right?
It's with no dark matter.
Yeah. Must be.
These things are so obvious to astronomers.
One of these days, Danny,
the rest of the world.
we're gonna do a news quiz that I'm gonna have you create
On medicine, I like it.
on medicine, and you're just gonna
Or engineering, or both.
I think we should actually do that for the next Astro Show. What do you say?
That's right, guys. Duh. Come on.
Do you want to do it? I think that'd be great.
We could do that, sure.
I think you should do it. I think you should put the news quiz together for the next Astro Show.
Okay. Or we can have it as like a hip pocket thing for some subsequent one. We can talk about it. I'm game for that though. Sure.
Okay, cool. So really, really interesting thing. So we, based on the initial observations of Aruba and subsequent astronomers, basically we think that all galaxies should have large amounts of dark matter. And now there have been a few weird ones that have been found that don't have dark matter. Of all of those that have been found so far, this is the only one that's large, like the Milky Way galaxy. The galaxies that have been found so far without dark matter are like dwarf galaxies. But this is a really big spiral galaxy on the left there, bigger than the Milky Way, many times larger. And there's no dark matter in it. So it's really, really weird. And it really calls into question our current theories about how dark matter gets distributed in the universe. And there are already some ideas about how the dark matter could have been stripped away from this galaxy over time. And so it's not like astronomers are like throwing out the idea of dark matter being in every galaxy. But there does seem to be something strange going on with this galaxy, and the fact that it doesn't have any dark matter leads astronomers to believe that they need to rethink some of their theories about how that works. Okay, next one. Scientists recently proposed a new scientific discipline called WHAT that focuses on the study of how cultural and natural processes on Earth's moon, on Mars, and across the solar system may be altering, preserving, or destroying the material record of space exploration. So let me give you a little background on this. So basically, right, we're about to land on the moon again, and we are going to land on Mars. We're going to have boots on the ground on Mars in 10 to 20 years. We're probably going to have boots on the ground on other worlds eventually. So the idea is, are we going to be disturbing the history of space exploration when we do that? Right now, everything that's landed on the moon hasn't been touched by anything that we've sent to the moon. Everything that we've landed on Mars hasn't been touched by anything. But once humans are there, you can bet they're going to be going over the same areas where the first footprint landed on the moon and where the first robotic spacecraft landed on Mars. So shouldn't something be done to actually prepare to preserve this history of space exploration before it gets erased? So they've coined a new name for a scientific discipline to study this stuff, the history of space exploration that is on these worlds. So you want to take a stab on what this new scientific discipline might be called? So think of like how we try to come up with evidence for ancient cultures on Earth, right? So that's part of the name. Yep.
Archaeology and like space archaeology and anthropology or something.
Oh, you are so close, Danny. You are so close. We're gonna give that to you. The name of the new discipline is planetary geoarchaeology. Wow. That's the name of the new discipline, planetary geoarchaeology, and it's gonna create some structure and some protocols around preserving sites like this one, like the landing site of the Apollo 11 lander, where Neil Armstrong first walked on the moon and like put down the American flag. These sites probably should be preserved for perpetuity. And how do we make sure that happens, right? So that's what this discipline is all about. I think it's really, really cool. Planetary geoarchaeology.
Geoarchaeology. I like it.
Planetary geoarchaeology. Yeah. All right. Here we go. NASA recently awarded several companies with grants to develop what for future lunar missions? So think about
all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. So this is
space habitats.
Yeah.
Space suit. I actually just got back from a spacesuit or from a space habitat and spacesuit conference where we talked about all of this stuff. But really, there have been like a bunch of grants, a bunch of new contracts that have been formed for all of this kind of stuff.
Yeah. So habitats, spacesuits, and so what I was reading about today was a bit more not controversial, but a little on the more large scale and like fundamental necessities of what we're going to need to have long-term lunar missions,
like in situ resource utilization, ISRU.
Yeah, you're getting there. So these companies that NASA just awarded are going to be developing solar and nuclear power technology. They were just awarded yesterday or the day before, and so they've got these all kinds of schemes for how power is going to be generated on the moon and how it's going to be transferred over long distances. So one of the first tasks is to demonstrate power transmission over the cross of a kilometer distance. And so, it is going to be really interesting to see what happens with all this. And I think it's pretty cool, actually. I do have some qualms about the commercialization of space exploration, but it really is pushing the envelope on what's possible, right? NASA is not going to do this on their own. And so the fact that there are, hundreds, maybe thousands of companies now that are developing technologies for lunar missions, for Mars missions, I think that's what moves us forward as a species.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. It is definitely controversial, the part where we give this to private companies, but at the same time, it's clear that governments alone cannot do it because of the large amount of investment, but especially the large amount of risk involved, because there is a lot of risk in it. So it is. if we compare this to the space race in the 60s and 70s, the US was putting a very large chunk of the GDP into the space race, and now it just cannot do it. Well, it could, but it just won't. And so the answer is to have private people to assume the risk, and if they're going to assume the risk, they're going to expect some profit from it.
Yeah.
So it is controversial, but I think it's the way forward.
Yeah, I agree. I was actually reading another article today specifically about that risk, and it was a really interesting point that this guy was making, that there's a huge limiting factor right now with the development of this technology, which he claims is the idea that no one should ever die with these explorations. The idea is that you bring everybody home, no matter what the cost, and like that is how the technology gets developed without question. It is always about bringing everybody home. And it's like I had never really thought about that as like a limiting factor, but this guy was really playing the devil's advocate and saying, like, is this really what we believe to be possible? Are we really never going to have a tragedy with lunar missions or Mars missions? Like, is it a reasonable expectation? And like, are we really holding ourselves up by having that as like the fundamental ethic of how we explore space? And it was kind of a new one for me. I hadn't really thought about it in those terms before. I'm curious about what the two of you think about that.
Wow, it's something, I don't know.
I guess about which part? About
this idea that everything needs to be engineered to the nth degree before it is actually used to ensure that there is not a human loss of life with any of these new technologies to propel humans to the moon and the Mars and beyond.
Gotcha. I mean, I think anyone who signs on the dotted line to go on a mission like, of this magnitude would understand the reality that they may lose their life. But, that's just part of the deal. And even if one does lose one's life in pursuit of something like this, it will have been lost like for the benefit of humanity, in the sense that there will have been an extraordinary amount of exploration and and like improved understanding in a variety of ways. But I think regardless of the amount of engineering that goes into it, it's still a massive undertaking. And I think anyone who embarks on something like this would still appreciate the fact that it's intrinsically dangerous. On like and I can put up at another time, I can show like charts of like risk mapped out based upon just like comparing things that we do terrestrially, like climbing Mount Kilimanjaro or scuba diving or climbing Everest or driving a car, things like that. You're comparing that amount of risk to going on the International Space Station or, ultimately, going on one of these missions. And these sorts of missions are absolutely off the charts. But I think, part of what drives the people who pursue these kinds of things is understanding that is a possibility, but still driving at it because it still is so valuable. So, yeah, I don't know. I could talk about that for a long time. But I think the bottom line is that it wouldn't, recognizing the reality of the situation. I come from a background of one of my majors in college was actually bioethics. And, recognizing that you can dissect the ethical implications of missions like these and of all of the small decisions that go into creating a mission like going to the moon or going to the surface of Mars, for example. But at the end of the day, there's risk involved. Somebody could lose their life, and that ends up being on the individual who's undertaking that that endeavor to say, yep, I accept it. So Sorry for the diatribe. I have
No, that's great, Danny. That's why I asked. I thought you might have some ideas behind this idea.
Yeah, I mean, in building a little bit on that, I was exactly just thinking about the risks involved, like in driving a car and things like that. And I was thinking, we don't subject those industries to the same exacting standards as we subject space engineering. So uh, the, first of all, like, why don't we? I mean, like, just considering how many people die driving a car or something. No? But at the same time, do we really need to do that for space engineering? And because it just makes everything so much more expensive and time consuming. So
Right, and
it's an ethical conundrum there.
Yeah, well, that was the main point in this article, right? There are all these other industries where the cost to human life is dramatic.
Mhm.
It's huge, from the very mundane to driving from driving a car to the more like esoteric, like skydiving, for instance, or like base jumping, right? You know, and yeah, why are the standards different for space exploration? Because they certainly are. I mean, and why is, I think, a question worth asking.
Well,
so yeah, we probably don't have time. Oh, sorry, go for it, Danny.
I think I can chip away at that. I mean,
Yeah,
activities like base jumping or what have you are generally undertaken for the pure joy of the risk, whereas like expeditions to the surface of the moon or to Mars are for a variety of reasons. It's for exploring something new, and there's a really deep meaning and a deep fundamental purpose to it all. That's not just personal enjoyment, but it's also contributing to the future of humanity. And I think there's a sense among a lot of folks that work at NASA and ESA and JAXA and other spaceflight organizations, both commercial and government run, that is, for the folks that put their lives on the line to do this kind of work, there's a certain responsibility to make sure that, that whatever safety measures are reasonable, to be provided are provided. And so I think that's kind of a little bit of a give and take. At the end of the day, the risk is the risk, and everyone, I think, accepts that. But yeah, so there's a, in my mind at least, there's a big difference between somebody, driving a race car just for the pure joy of driving a race car and, zipping around and everything, versus doing, undertaking a mission like this with the potential to like alter the trajectory of humanity and learn new things that could impact a variety of fields in ways that we don't yet even comprehend. So
yeah, I tend to agree with that, Danny. I was asking, mostly rhetorically, and I think even with the more like pragmatic of like task of like transportation, of like driving to McDonald's, right? It's maybe not for enjoyment. We're like fulfilling like some basic needs, but it's not going to move humanity forward, right? So like if we do get into a car accident driving to McDonald's, like it doesn't change humanity to the extent that landing on Mars or the moon does.
Yeah,
well said. All right, we should get going here. We got 4 more questions, and then we're on to the guest spot. Here we go. For this one, you're gonna have to put on your pop culture hats here.
Oh.
Okay, here we go. Which famous guitarist and astrophysicist is about to release a book of 3D images of asteroid Bennu?
That's Brian May.
Brian May,
Yeah.
the illustrious guitar player of Queen, the only world-renowned guitarist who is a professional and published astrophysicist. He's legit.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, when I found this out about Brian May, I developed a whole new level of respect for him. Like, this guy is not only a brilliant guitar player, but a brilliant astrophysicist. And I don't know how he got connected with this researcher who was involved with the asteroid Bennu mission, but they've decided to team up and create this really cool like book of 3D images of asteroid Bennu, and they're going to be releasing it pretty soon. So I'm I might buy myself a copy of this book. I think it'll be pretty cool. All right, next question. Last month, which space company had its historic 200th rocket launch?
SpaceX.
SpaceX. Nice one, Danny.
Woo-hoo.
Yep. Yeah, just over a month ago, 200th launch. Pretty remarkable in such a short amount of time. Yeah, really, really amazing stuff. Okay, last two questions. This one is it's historic, actually, just like this 200th rocket launch. Tomorrow, the U.S. House of Representatives will hear testimony on what type of phenomena, the first time in U.S. history that they will ever hear testimony on this type of phenomena.
Is this like UFOs or something like that?
UFO.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was gonna guess that.
This is not even a farce. This is real. So this is the unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAPs, as they are now called. Please, Rene. The PC term is UAPs, no longer UFOs. we don't call them that anymore because they are not highly regarded by science. However, UAPs, now that is something to respect. But so yeah, there have been a group of researchers looking into all of the sightings. A few people who have actually who call themselves whistleblowers, who claim that the Pentagon is hiding information about UAPs, is going to be testifying in front of Congress tomorrow. And yeah, maybe we're going to get some really, really interesting stuff on the books about these phenomena that we just don't know that much about yet. Anyways, you can tune in live. It's being publicly broadcast. So if you do a Google search for the U.S. House of Representatives subcommittee hearing on UAPs tomorrow, you can watch it live on C-SPAN, and NASA is going to stream it as well. So it's yeah, it's a hot topic. All right, one last question. Speaking of hot topics, a new theory suggests that what might have led to Venus's incredibly volcanic surface. So something had to get the surface of Venus really, really hot, molten, basically, for all of these like hundreds of volcanoes across the surface of Venus. What's the latest theory about how these volcanoes actually came to be?
I don't know. I is this some sort of like plate tectonics or something like that?
Well, so we don't think that Venus has plate tectonics. Astronomers have been trying to identify plate tectonics on Venus for a long time, but there don't seem to be any. It's plate tectonics that lead to volcanism on Earth. So you're correct in that. But the new theory suggests that it was actually a different phenomena that led to this heating of the Venusian surface to form all these volcanoes. Think friction from a different place, not below the surface.
Oh, like wind?
You're on the right track.
Or convective currents from heating the atmosphere, and like sulfuric acid particles, and I don't know.
Even bigger, more extreme. So the current theory about this is that it came from impacts from ancient comets and asteroids that during the period of bombardment. This is when like the planets had formed, but there was still just a ton of leftover material all over the solar system, which rained down on the Earth and Venus and the other terrestrial planets. The idea is that so much of it rained down on Venus that it basically made the surface molten and actually created all of this volcanic activity, and has led to the surface of Venus being quite young. Not quite as young as the Earth's surface, but still quite young compared to like the surface of the Moon or the surface of Mars. So yeah, asteroid and comet impacts. All right, well, that is the end of this week's astronomy news quiz. Rene, I think you pulled out ahead by a couple questions there, so you are this week's champion.
Ooh.
Nice job. All right.
Every week, it's okay.
Danny, next week is your week when you create the news quiz. You're gonna clean up.
Yes.
It's okay. No, I'll be proctoring the thing. I can't win.
I mean, I don't know. I kind of feel like I win every week, so it's all good. It's like when you stump people, you win.
I love it. It's cool. I learn something new every time. So
I mean, and I'm looking forward to learning the stuff that you're going to teach next time. I think it's going to be great. It's long overdue. We should have done that a long time ago. All right. Well, that brings us to the guest spot. Again, Dr. Rene A. Ortega Minikata is here with us today. Rene, thank you so much for being here. And yeah, we're don't worry, we're going to go over the 1 hour mark. That's fine. We always end a little bit late here anyways. We've got plenty of time to talk. There's no rush. And so welcome to the Astro Show. We're excited to have you with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. So we like to start these guest spots by asking the same question to everybody, which is, what's the one thing that you wish everybody would ask you, but nobody ever does?
I thought a lot about this question, and honestly, I think people would ask how it is that we do what we do in terms of science communication. So what is how and why we do science communication, because that's something people never ask. Yeah, probably that.
Well, Rene, how and why do we do science communication? That's a perfect segue, because that's what you focus on right now, right?
Yes. I've been working. Okay, so I work here as it says in the slide, in the Institute of Astronomy and Astrophysics at UNAM, which is in a city that is not in Mexico City, is in Morelia, a smaller city. And I've been working here for almost 4 years, and I work almost completely on science communication and public engagement and outreach. So this is what I do now. And how is a very long answer, the how, but the why, I think I can say that because we should. I think that's the answer. But because we should. I think that when we do science in general, but astronomy in particular, there's a lot that we can give back to people, not only in terms of knowledge, but in terms of I don't know how to say it, like scientific culture. I think that if we, especially us, because we're a public university, if we're being given the opportunity by the people through their taxes to do this in science, I mean, as a scientific activity, then we have to give them back something. And this is, there's a lot of things that we can give back, but especially, I think, scientific culture is something that is very important for us. And for me, in particular, I mean, I'm doing this because I want to, not only because this is the job I could get, but this is because I want to do this, and this is important to me. So that's probably the why we do it, and how it's just that there are so many ways we do this. And that's probably something that I would like to talk a little bit about today.
Yeah, please. I know we've got some pictures up there, so whenever you want me to bring up one of the pictures, just let me know. But yeah, I'd love to hear more about the type of public outreach and science communication that you do there.
Yeah, so if you want to just roll them on, yeah. So there are many things that we do here. The main thing is to go directly with the public, and this is the part with public engagement and outreach. So we do star parties like the picture we have here, but we do a lot of other things. So from like science fairs to going directly to schools. We go to small towns in different parts of the state. We are here. We cover here mostly our state, which is the state of Michoacan, which is I don't know how to say this, in the central western part of the country, and uh, and what we do is try to interest people in different ways, and to reach people in different ways. For example, if you put the next one, we have a sort of a science fair, if you want to call it that way, specifically for kids, for young kids, like for primary school and younger. So we have there in the picture the people in orange, in the orange t-shirts, like holding the cardboard boxes. They are grad students. So we actually do a lot of things because of them. The grad students are part of the people that help a lot in doing these things. So we have them in the picture, and then there's I'm pointing to the picture like if you could see me, right? But you see the young kids in the front of just beside the table, and this is from the last science fair we had for kids, which is last May, and this is one of the things we do. But the thing is, there are a lot of things that formal education cannot cover, and there are not only in terms of knowledge, but in terms of ways of getting to know things, ways of getting knowledge, and that's part of what we want to do with children. So we also receive schools. We have school groups coming here to our place, and we have that's I'm not the next one, but the other one. So if you go two more, and then yeah, that one. So you can see me on the left, but we have like a open air museum or something like that. I don't know if we can say that. We have several installations that we use for explaining different astronomy topics within the university campus here. So we invite the school groups. We invite schools, and they come, and we have we take them to this. We guide them through this, but it is also open to the public, so everyone can come and just visit whenever they want. So I'm there with this was before the pandemic, so that was in a winter month. So I'm there with my scarf and stuff, and but we do have a lot of school groups coming here, and we also go to schools. So if you put the next one, yeah, it's the next one. So we are in a school for children with disabilities. So it's the public education system in Mexico has a way of tending to children with disabilities, where there are several ways of doing it, but there's usually one school for the children with disabilities in an area. But they're all mixed. It's physical disabilities, but it's also cognitive disabilities, all of them at the same time. So we have gone to a few of these, and we do several like activities that are designed for children, and especially for children with disabilities, always with the help of teachers, and in many cases with the help of parents. So we have a couple of mothers in the picture that are helping with the activities. So that's also something else we do. We go to the teachers, and I don't know how to say this, something like teacher training, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So we do that so not only they can do this when we come, so they can reproduce this over and over again in years to come. So these are a few of the things we do. And if you go back to the one that we skipped, I think I didn't put the right order into this. This is one of the science fairs, but this is for people in like high school. So it's more like a vocational thing, I think you can call that. Okay, yeah. I'm trying to translate for the names in Spanish, and then sometimes
You're doing great, man. Your English is way better than my Spanish.
So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So we do these types of like science fairs for high school people. So they see different areas in science. So maybe they will go into a science career. Um, but this is only a few of the things that we do. We do a lot of other things that I would. Uh, I mean, it's not for me to like give a report right now or something like that. But the thing is, uh, I think that at least here in Mexico, people have a natural. I mean, I say here in Mexico because this is my environment and this is what I know. People have a natural sense of wonder about astronomic things, uh, and people want to know. It's just that the way that we have presented this, especially in formal educational, is just not attractive. So we try to do different things that may be a little bit more interesting in terms of attractiveness, and we try to do also things that may people may find useful. So, for example, to talk in that picture, then that's why I chose this picture to talk about different types of light. We have an infrared camera in the TV, and we're showing how the plastic bag lets some of the infrared light go through, even if it's
Oh,
black to
cool.
our eyes. Uh, but we relate that, for example, to climate change, because we talk about how the atmosphere does a similar thing and stuff like that. So we're trying to um, give the public this type of knowledge in a much more cultural way. So it's not something isolated over there, and it's not just like a piece of information that they're going to forget 5 minutes later.
Right.
So I mean, I like doing it. That's why I do it. But we think also that it is important that we do it, and that it's relevant, and that it has. Uh, we think and we hope that it is like that. We're actually giving back something to the people by doing these things. And I don't have a picture of this, but we're also very interested in doing this with different type of audiences. And so we have, for example, some of the installations we have here, we have recently added braille plaques, for
Oh,
example.
cool.
So we're trying to do this, and we have worked with Mexican Sign Language interpreters in the past, and so we're doing these types of things for so more people can if they want to, if they're interested, more people have the access to do it, because there are many people that want to but just don't have the access to do it. And we are also working with people here in Michoacan. The most spoken indigenous language is Purepecha, so we're also working with people that translate to Purepecha. So we're trying to do all these things. It's a lot of work, and it goes. I think everybody will say that there is not enough resources and people doing it, but little by little, whatever we can do, this is what we do. So I think that for the people watching us right now, or maybe later in the recording, I, if you have the opportunity to do something like this, just go for it, because it's very rewarding. It's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding, and I think it's very important.
Well, you're preaching to the choir here, Rene. This is what I do with my life. So you sold me. Yeah, I mean, it's basically what Wyoming stargazing is all about, right?
Of course.
We want to create broader access to understanding about the universe, and we do that in lots of different ways, including this show, right? Like, this is just like another way for us to reach people and to give people an opportunity to talk about what they do, and like the many different ways that people explore science and astronomy, and how they interface with that. It's not just about researchers, it's teachers, it's
Yes.
outreach coordinators. We all play our part in advancing the public understanding of science. So yeah,
Yes.
I couldn't agree with you more. So how did you find your way into doing, first of all, astronomy and radio astronomy, and then how did you land in doing outreach as opposed to research?
Wow, it's been a journey. First of all,
Yeah.
I'm not really a radio astronomer. I work in the Radio Astronomy Institute, but I'm not really a radio astronomer.
Fair enough.
So okay, I got interested in astronomy when I was in high school. Well, probably much younger, but like more oriented to astronomy when I was in high school. And I remember asking my physics teacher, what should I do if I want to do astronomy? And he says, of course, you have to study physics. I mean, that was obvious for him. That was an obvious answer for him that I honestly didn't know. So I went into physics, and I went into doing grad school in astronomy. I studied here in Mexico, all of those. And but since I was in grad school, I was always involved in some sort of outreach effort or something, just because I wanted to, and also because the grad program needed us to help. So there was that thing, they needed our help, but I wanted to do it. So I started learning how to do it alongside learning how to do research, just by experience. And then I did go into the research journey for a while. So I went to a couple of postdocs, and at some point, when I was doing a postdoc in Mexico City, it just ended. And I decided not to go to another one. No, so just like this is it, and I'm going to go in another way. So I wanted to go into outreach, because I realized finally, after so many years, that this is what that I had gone into astronomy because I wanted to do this, not because I wanted to do research. But it took me like I don't know, like 8 years to find that out, to realize it at least.
Yeah.
So I started looking for options. I was teaching while looking for options. Unfortunately, I got the job here, so I moved here and to Morelia, and started working here about 4 years ago, a little bit less than 4 years ago, and it's been honestly, it's been the joy of my life to come here, to work here.
No.
To be honest, to be very, very honest, I really like doing the job that I do here. It's very tiring, I won't lie, and it's a lot of work, but I really like it. So that's more or less my journey.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, my journey is similar as well. I got into astronomy because I love teaching people about it, not because I wanted to do research. And I only did as much as I had to finish up my degrees, and then I went right into outreach.
Yeah.
What else would you like to share about your experiences in astronomy? What other stuff interests you in terms of the professional work that you do that you think folks would be interested in hearing about?
Well, I have a personal interest in generally in equity in astronomy and in astronomy outreach. I've talked a little bit about this right with the things that we do, but I think it it's a very difficult thing to do, and it's a very complicated thing to do. There are a lot of things to take into consideration, especially when you have I mean, I think most of our modern societies are very diverse, so we need to take into account uh, all the different. Um, I talk about in terms of communications and all the different audiences, because these are like
Yeah.
audiences. Um, but it's just that you don't talk the same way to different audiences, to different people. And so you have to reach people in different ways. So and I think this is a question of equity, because if you don't talk to people, or you don't reach people in a way that they will get you, that they will understand you, then you're not doing enough for them. So you're not. So that is, and it is really honestly a very difficult thing to do. It's a many people job, and sometimes there's just very few people that are doing this. So I'm interested in this. We're doing a little bit the bits that we can in terms of time and resources with this. But this is something that interests me very much, and I hope I can continue doing a bit of that. And also every once in a while I have the chance to do a little bit of research, mostly through collaborations. So when I have a little bit of time to collaborate on that, I'm actually moving away from astrophysics proper, and I'm doing like sort of, I like to call it meta astrophysics. So it's like a research on astrophysics.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
So so we have a project that we want to do some research on what are astrophysics graduates doing with their lives, basically. So it's if they are really doing science, or they're using the skills they learned in other things. So it's kind of a meta project in that sense.
Very
So
cool.
where we have that in that's I mean, we've had that in plans for about 2 years, and we haven't really had time to do it. But we want to go into that, and also a little bit more into education of astronomy. That's more even in the beginning stages. But those are things that I would like to do, and I hope I find a bit of time to do them at some point.
Wonderful. Well, it's clear to me that you have got a real passion for education. So I think we need more and more people like you in astronomy education. So
Thank you very much.
yeah. Well, we should probably wrap things up here. But if you have any final words of wisdom for budding astronomers, or any kids who end up watching this recording and are interested in going into astronomy or physics or any science, what do you want to leave them with?
Definitely to have a very broad field of view of what they can do. Not to marry as subjects or something like that. And if anyone watching ends up going into a science career, like going to grad school and stuff, that whatever they learn in grad school can be used for many other things, not just research. So I don't want to be pessimistic, but the job market is difficult for any job in the world right now. And but if you learn whatever you learn in a science career is useful for many other things that you can do. So we have a very open mind, and also to explore what their passions are. Sometimes we go into something thinking that we want something because of, like me, like I went into astronomy because I thought, because I wanted to be a researcher, and I needed a lot of time to explore, and that I went into astronomy because I wanted to do astronomy outreach, not because I wanted to do astronomy research. So that like, let yourself explore what really makes you passionate. Um, and one very final word of advice is that never ignore your mental health. Because that's a mistake I made, and I paid the price, and now I'm better, hopefully. I mean, thankfully, I'm better, but never ignore your mental health.
Yeah. There's always a balance to be found.
Yes.
And that balance is different for everyone.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Yeah, so true. Well, those are fine words. Rene, thank you for sharing that. Danny, did you have any final thing you wanted to add or ask?
Not ask so much as maybe just add, to what you said when it comes to, having really young students pick their field of study. A way that I've started approaching it when I advise students is, if you're not sure what you most like to study, ask yourself how you would most like to learn to think. Because whatever you study, and I think the sciences train you in a certain way, the engineering disciplines train you in a certain way, to think. Liberal arts train you in a bit of a different way. They train you to think in a certain specific way. I say that as somebody who, went the liberal arts route initially, and then studied medicine, and then studied engineering. And so I've kind of seen these different fields, and it's like, oh, wow, they really are very different in terms of the way of thinking that they ingrain in you. So, for folks who are a little bit lost, or are wondering what they, where they kind of fit into the bigger picture, maybe one question to ask themselves is less about, where do you want to wind up? Because if they don't know that, then at least, how would you like to learn to think? So.
I love that, Danny. That is a great way to kind of turn that like directional thought on its head, and really kind of get to the nuts and bolts of like how our lives go, right? Because it really is about our perspective. It's about how we think about things.
Yep.
I love that. Nicely done. Danny, Rene, thank you both so much for being here. Rene, we've got a special gift for you for your time today, a nice astrophotography print that one of our board members takes at his observatory. So I'll reach out to you about that. And
wow, thank you very much.
Yeah, you got a choice between like 100 different prints to choose from.
Wow, so thank you.
I'll chat about that offline. So yeah, again, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. Danny, as always, thank you for your humility, your insight, your sharing. It's always great to have you on the Astro Show.
Good to be here. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks to all of you who were watching the show tonight, and to those of you who will watch us recording later on. We really appreciate you tuning in and checking it out. All the other folks that support Wyoming stargazing and make the Astro Show possible, our board of directors, and all of our staff at the office. So thanks again for tuning in. We hope that you join us next time in a couple weeks. But until then, be well, and don't forget to look up. We'll see you next time. Bye.